Can you not? That's indecent. Hi, my name is Adriana, and today I will be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So, fun fact, the day I am actually filming this is Tripp's second birthday, June 25th. So, hey buddy, yeah. Everybody wish happy birthday to Tripp in the comments. And I will put in some puppy pictures at the end of this video so you can see some pictures of him when he was tiny. Alright, well it's really hot and I gotta get him to a grooming appointment at some point. I guess this is the way we're gonna do it. I set up the camera so that you could sit up over here. Okay. You wanna sit back in your spot? So let's get into the tag. I watched my video, my mid-year freakout tag from last year to kind of remember what all the questions were. And I don't recommend going back and watching that video because I didn't know what I was doing with editing and I didn't have a microphone, so it sounds like shit. But I do want to just give a round of applause to my hair from a year ago. Oh my goodness. Every 3 to 4 years, I'm like, I need to cut my hair. And then every time I like look back at how long and luscious my hair was, I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. And this is the same. Anyways, enough about my hair. This is supposed to be about books. Let's get into the first question. The best book of 2021 so far. That is definitely Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I would hold up the physical copy I have, but I have loaned it out to basically everyone I know because I think everybody needs to read this book. So my friend currently has it. But yes, that was definitely my favorite book. It is a speculative fiction on kind of a like purgatory kind of trope thing where the main character, Nora, tries to commit suicide, or I guess somewhat successfully commits suicide. I don't know. She takes a bunch of pills one night and gets put into this kind of in-between phase, and she gets to explore all the different options she could have had in life had she made different decisions. And I loved this book so much, and my expectations weren't super high for it. I just heard a lot of hype on BookTube and whatnot, and I picked it up, and I am so glad I did because it is definitely probably going to end up being my favorite book of 2021. If not, it's definitely gonna break my top 5 of like favorite books of all time. It's so good. The next question is the best sequel you read this year. And I was kind of looking through my reading spreadsheet, my record that I keep of all the books I read this year, and I haven't read too many sequels, and a lot of the sequels I did read I wasn't a huge fan of, so I think I'm probably going to end up going with Crooked Kingdom. I mean, I've really thoroughly enjoyed that book as well as Six of Crows, so I mean, it is a really good sequel, but it just didn't have a whole lot of competition in my reading this year. The next question is a new release that you haven't read yet but you really want to. And somehow all of the new releases I haven't got to yet have been Greek mythology based. So I have a lot of Greek mythology based books that I want to get to. The first one being Lore. It came out earlier this year, maybe like, it was like pretty early this year, but it keeps getting pushed back, but I do want to read this soon. The next one is A Thousand Ships, a Trojan War, Helen of Troy kind of retelling that I am excited for. It was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, so I think I'm really excited for this one. And then the last one is one I actually pre-ordered and got a signed copy of, but that is Daughter of Sparta. And this is definitely kind of intriguing to me because it's a retelling of the Daphne and Apollo story that doesn't really get a whole lot of, I guess, hype in the Greek mythology retelling world. So I am really excited for this. I think it's going to be super fun. But yeah, those are the 3 I want to get to, and they just all happen to be Greek mythology. Question number 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of 2021. I actually got a lot of new releases like in June, so I was kind of like scrambling to come up with stuff because I haven't really been paying attention to what's being released in the next half of this year. But one that is on my radar for sure is the Hawthorne Legacy, the sequel to the Inheritance games. Man, I blanked on that. I really, really enjoyed the Inheritance games, so I am looking forward to picking up that sequel. I think it's coming out in like September time frame. And then the other one that I am also very excited for, but I am not totally sure if it'll actually get released this year, is Kingdom of Bones by James Rollins. It is the newest installment in the Sigma Force, a serialized series that I've been reading since high school. It's a adventure, spy, thriller novel. It was supposed to be released in August, but it's been pushed back to December. And the author is releasing another fantasy novel soon, so I have a feeling that that's kind of the reason it got pushed back, and it might get pushed back further, just depending on how his schedule works out. So if that does get released in December, I will be reading it for sure as soon as I get my hands on it. But if not, then, you know, it is what it is. 5 is the biggest disappointment of this year. And I actually haven't been too disappointed by stuff. Like, I read Ready Player 2, and that was just a bad book, but I kind of knew it was going to be bad going in, so it didn't really disappoint me. So the closest thing I could kind of get to like an actual disappointment was The End Is Near by Dan Carlin. And I talked a little bit about this in my wrap-up for the last 2 months. But Dan Carlin is a history podcaster who does these gigantic podcast series, really delving deep into different sections of history. So I was really excited to pick up this book and listen to it. He narrates it himself on the audiobook, so it was like kind of like more podcast essentially. But when I read the blurb of the book, it was supposed to be about, well, it is about the downfalls of a lot of societies over many, many years. And usually his podcasts are a lot more kind of like focused in on a certain time period or a certain event. So that was like kind of nerve-wracking for me. And then the audiobook is only 7 hours long, and his most recent podcast was 6 hours long. So his entire book was basically an episode of one of his podcasts. And it definitely wasn't as in depth as a lot of his other stuff, but I mean, I still enjoyed it. It just wasn't quite what I had hoped it would be. But I think if you aren't a fan of the hardcore history podcast yet, or if you haven't listened to that much of Dan Carlin, I think it's a really great kind of introduction into a lot of events and time periods that he brings up quite a bit throughout a lot of his podcasts. Number 6 is your biggest surprise. That was Daisy Jones and the Six. Pretty much the only reason I picked it up is because everyone ranted and raved about the audiobook and how cool it was to have a full cast of people talking on it and kind of being able to incorporate some of that music element into there. And so I really wasn't looking into like anything for like plot wise or whatever. I was just kind of in there for the story, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. I really liked it. So, and that might have just been because I went in with like low expectations, but it did surprise me. It definitely exceeded my expectations. Question number 7 is your new favorite new author? I don't know. I'm going with Casey McQuiston. So I read Red, White, and Royal Blue last year, and I enjoyed it. It was like a fun, kind of fluffy read. So it wasn't certainly like, it wasn't my favorite book of the year, but it wasn't like my least favorite. It was just kind of sitting in there like a happy, like, it was a good book time. I had a good time reading it. And I was expecting the same thing from One Last Stop. And this ended up being like way cooler than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was just gonna be a fluffy, sapphic romance, but it ended up being really, really cool. And I just finished this like yesterday. And part of the reason I was reading it was, I mean, obviously I enjoyed Red, White, and Royal Blue, so, you know, I figured I would pick this one up as well, but my mom also enjoyed Red, White, and Royal Blue, and she wanted me to read this before her as kind of like a sensitivity reader, not because she's anti-sapphic, but because she's anti-sci-fi. So she wanted me to read it first to make sure that it wasn't too crazy sci-fi for her. So it is not. It's very light on the sci-fi part, time traveling twist part. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny. That was part of the reason I picked it up so quickly, was to read it for my mom to make sure it wasn't too much sci-fi. I love my mom. Okay, my camera died, so I had to change the battery. So if the angle looks a little bit different, that's why. I think I finished up the last question. So question number 8 is your newest fictional crush. And for that, I think the only choice I have is Nikolai Lantsov from the Shadow and Bone series. I mean, I enjoy him. I think he's a great character, and pretty much none of the other characters, except for maybe Jane from One Last Stop, and August. I like them both. They're both great. But he is A+. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and I think this is probably recency bias, but I'm going to go with Jessica from Dune. I have only read Dune, I only recently read it, and I haven't read the rest of the series, but I really like her as a character in this series. I think she has a very interesting backstory and arc, and she's really badass and cool, and I don't know. I mean, she's legit. She's a bad bitch, and I appreciate that about her. Number 10 is a book that made you cry. And I don't think I've shed any actual tears, but I've gotten very, very close. And that was at the end of Daisy Jones and the Six. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't read it yet, but the end of that book, like, had me there. I was there. And yeah, it was intense. I think that's also part of the reason it was such a surprise for me, is I didn't think it would actually get me to feel emotional that way. Number 11 is a book that made you happy, and I decided to go with American Royals. I read it at the beginning of this year, and all the romances in that book are just so fun and so cute, and they just make me very happy when they're together. So I do want to finish reading that series. So far I've only read the first one, but it did make me very happy. Number 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought, and I think that goes to Burn. I love a good graphic kind of cover. I think this one's super cool with like the black on black kind of dragon, and the flames are really cool, and I don't know, I like it. I think it's real neat, and I bought it a couple weeks ago from a bookstore. Question number 13 is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? The first kind of bunch is I really wanted to try to read the entire Percy Jackson and the Olympian series this year. I read the first one at the end of last year. I read the second one recently, and I really would like to finish out the last 3 this year. Overall, I'd like to try to get all the way caught back up to the most recent Trials of Apollo. I think I've only read one of those. Anyways, like, I have a whole big thing where I want to reread the whole Percy Jackson universe, and this year I just want to get through Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I think I should be able to get there. The other one that I want to read by the end of the year, and that I will probably be picking up very soon, is The Space Between Worlds. I talked about this in my book haul that I posted a few weeks ago, but yeah, Jayla from Lala Loves Lit recommended this to me, and I think it sounds super dope, and I think Jayla and I have fairly similar reading tastes, so I'm really excited to check this one out. And the last question is your favorite book to movie adaptation, and I think the only book to screen adaptation I've seen this year has been Shadow and Bone, so I think that automatically wins, and I really enjoyed the show. I thought it was really fun, and I thought the way they kind of interwove the two sides of the Grishaverse was really cool. So that is all I have. Tripp, say bye to the people on your birthday. Say bye. Bye! Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video, and I will put in some pictures of Tripp for his birthday.